Hi guys, welcome back to another Chai and Cabin episodes. We just wrapped up an incredible episode with Dave Menepace, who's a mentor for Jen and who's a mentor for me. And he delivered a ton of value. We talk about real estate, we talk about mindset, we talk about how a hot tub guy just brought him the biggest deal of his life and how to serve people. Jen, what did you think about the call?
I always love Dave's calls because he did it in the mastermind too, but he just really is so good at making the mindset stuff easier to understand because that can be kind of a like topic that can be really confusing and just kind of overwhelming. So I like how he breaks it down. I love when he talks about how he restarted his whole business essentially and went from 0 to 24 co-hosting clients in a matter of like a year. I mean, it's a really great episode packed with some really good valuable tips and nuggets.
I couldn't agree more. And I meant to ask you how you're doing. I know you're a little bit under the weather today. So thanks for stepping.
Yeah, I'm all right. We're my husband's holding down the fort. He's the only one who's not got the stomach bug yet. So hopefully we'll be all healthy tomorrow and go into the weekend refreshed.
I love it, guys. Please enjoy this episode. And if you guys have any recommendations for anyone else who want us to bring down, just drop us a comment below. Enjoy. Guys, I am so excited to have Dave Menepace here with us today. Dave is actually one of my mentors, and Jen, I'm sure he's also one of your mentors because we're
Yep.
in the same mindset program together. And I've learned so much from you, Dave. And on this call, or on this podcast, I want to focus on obviously on your real estate journey and your short-term rentals, but then towards the later, and I really want to talk about mindset because I've seen a huge shift. Like I met you face to face in November, and I talk to you now, and it's like talking to an entirely new Dave. And people are gonna say I'm crazy on the call. But I want to talk about that. So how did you get started in short-term rentals? Like what was your life kind of before that?
Yeah. So, short-term rentals started in 2019, in April of 2019 for Kim and I. Before that, there was no short-term rentals, but it was still Dave. I was in healthcare. So, to summarize, I was in healthcare, data analytics, and consulting was my background. We helped hospitals save money and figure out how to not get shut down or shut themselves down because hospitals, healthcare is a business.
Mhm.
And it was in 2019 that Kim and I bought a house in Cape Cod with zero aspirations for short-term rental. I actually didn't want to rent it out at all. I just wanted to use it. And but what happened was we were finishing up grad school. There was a home for sale in Cape Cod. There was actually a lot back then. It was pre-COVID. And every weekend we had been vacationing at one of my best friend's grandmother's homes in Cape Cod. And we kind of got tired of like crashing on the kitchen floor when we were married. We are like, what are we doing? So for that next summer, we wanted to either rent or buy something. And it was Kim who found the home and we ended up seeing it. And long story short, we bought it. And that was our entry into short-term rental. Little summer beach cottage in Cape Cod. And we absolutely loved it. From there, we went into a few different real estate disciplines and circled back on short-term rentals pretty quickly after that. But that was our introduction anyways.
Very cool. And what does your portfolio look like now?
So we own 2 short-term rentals. We own 3 long-term rental doors now, a duplex and a single family home. We've done 4 flips and then we co-host 24 properties now.
Wow. That is some crazy growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you attribute that to? What got you guys from like, hey, I'm not gonna even rent out my own house in 2019 to 24 growth?
Yeah. Well, I guess we can spend the next hour talking about that or so. um, so I'll share my story in a little bit more depth. So, that first year of us managing our property, we always knew like there was no way we were going to have a property manager. We were going to do it ourselves. And we kind of got this business in a box when we bought the home. The old owners taught us the ropes. They gave us access to their Airbnb account so we could copy and paste things into ours. And we just sort of built it. Now, what was funny is you hear all the time, if you're going to go into business with anyone, including your spouse, have roles and responsibilities. Well, we never did that. And so we kept overriding each other, kind of doing the same thing all the time. This was pre-automated messages. So a guest would ask a question and Kim would say one answer, I would say a different one. And we'd both send it at the same time from different rooms.
Right.
It was very old school. It was very DIY, but it was also very fun. It was really fun. My favorite thing was always whenever I had to do work on the home, going inside and reading this guest book that we'd have people sign and actually reading what people would share. And that year, somebody got engaged at the house. And I was like, I'm not sure where, this house is tiny, but we were like, this is so cool. Like, how neat is that? This house is part of their story. They'll never forget it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really, really cool. It was really neat. So we finished up that first year in 2019. It was neat because we never had to make a mortgage payment. That income just covered the mortgage. So in February, March of 2020, I started doing some upgrades to the house, some painting, some new flooring in some of the rooms. So I spent a decent amount of time down there. At that point, we just had one kiddo still, and he was pretty young, so they sleep a lot. So it wasn't too much of a burden on Kim if I went down there and worked on the home. And I was listening to Bigger Pockets all the time. Like Kim actually introduced me to Bigger Pockets, and I just went deep. I was like, okay. I didn't go to episode 1. I wasn't that crazy, but I just kept listening to
I have.
different.
I think it's an entrepreneur thing. Like when people, I've heard like 1 through, I think until they have get up to Grant Cardone.
Wow, I love it. I love it. That's pretty impressive. So, Kim and I want to use the burst strategy to buy another one. The problem is I got everything lined up to do this in Cape Cod again. Uh, we're able to leverage some equity in our primary and in that Cape house because it had gone up in value in just that year. I was having a lot of trouble finding homes to actually do this with. And the other challenge is homes are really expensive there. And I was a little bit scared. I was like, man, if I do it and I mess it up, I only get one crack at it. And real estate investing, it takes repetition, it takes practice, and it takes some tolerance of stuff that's not fun. Right. So Kim and I sat down and we thought, why don't we maybe buy in an area of the country where things are more affordable? And through Bigger Pockets and what I had learned there, we started investing out of state. And that's when we started doing the burst strategy out of state. So that was summer of 2020. So about a year and a quarter after that first purchase. And we partnered with a friend of mine who had capital and an interest. And that's when we went on this run of, I think it was like 7 or 8 purchases in a year and a half, long-term
Wow.
rentals.
Mhm.
And we learned everything about creative financing and working with wholesalers and working with hard money lenders and property managers, because we did have a long-term rental property manager. And it was really neat. Like that, what I learned out of that whole experience was to just take one action every single day. But the other thing, and this goes into mindset, and I don't think I actually ever fully connected these dots until this call here. The first time you start calling lenders and you say, I'm a real estate investor, but like you haven't really invested in real estate or you wouldn't consider yourself to be an investor yet. That's like how you'd get people on the phone with you to talk, right? You kind of had to walk the walk a little or talk the talk before you could walk the walk sometimes. It's a lot of what we teach now in mindset too, of like be the person you're becoming. So just kind of made that connection.
It's not until you make it, it's believe in it until you make it.
Yeah. It's kind of cool. So we made this amazing network in Chattanooga, Tennessee, an amazing network. Realtor who's still one of my best friends. Her and her husband are still some of my best friends. We did a lot of business together. And eventually, back in the winter of 2019, so we bought that first house in the Cape in spring of 2019. In December of 2019, we were sort of the mindset, if we find the right deal, we'll figure out the money. Well, we started looking at mountain houses up in Sunday River, Bethel, and New Remain area. And found some we loved. We never pulled the trigger though. We're just kind of like, this is a lot. This is a lot. We have a kid now, like this a lot. And that was part of why I almost like retracted from STR and started doing some long-term rental stuff. Well, at the end of 2021, so 2 years later, because that
And you
was
still
first
had
in,
your full-time job throughout all of this.
yep, full-time job. There were some changes in my career, mostly promotions and different job responsibilities. But I did get good at figuring out how to work like 12 to 16-ish hours a week and just do this. I also got my real estate license in this time and started selling real estate as just another income stream. So I was doing my thing. I was definitely multi-jobbing it. And so December of 2021 comes along, 2 years after I initially started looking up in Maine, and I just started emailing owners that bought the houses that I wanted to buy 2 years before. And I just started saying, hey, if you ever want to sell, I gave them a much more like sort of sappy email story about our family and a picture of us that was pretty darn good family picture and all that sort of stuff. And eventually this lady emailed me back. I'm like,
Find their
holy
contact
crap.
information.
What's that?
You find their contact information.
Ooh,
Like,
I love that. Yeah, some tangible goodies for people. So I knew the addresses of the homes. I
mhm.
knew the addresses because I was looking at them a couple years before, and I starred them in Zillow, so it was easy for me to find them a couple years later. I put those addresses into the website True People Search, and you'd get all sorts of information in there, and phone numbers, sometimes email addresses, sometimes mailing addresses. But this one had an email address listed, which sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And I just sent an email to that email that was listed. That's how I got
Well,
it. And a week or two after I emailed her, she said, we would be open to the idea of selling. We've put like 50, 60 grand into the house in the last 2 years, and it's a lot of house, and we're older and we have some family health issues. Hey, right, being a solution maker, you're, as a real estate investor, you create solutions for people. And so now the numbers behind that house, in 2019 winter, those owners bought it for 250,000, which is hilarious. It would sell now for like 750. It just it's a
That's
gorgeous house.
amazing. Wow, that sounds
yeah.
So
amazing.
she bought it for 250. They put about 50 to 60K into it. And I asked them, how much do you want for it? We'll start there. And she said 420. And I said, why don't we do 430 and you'll just cover the closing costs? We'll buy the rate down a little bit if needed. And she was like, absolutely. And the realtor that listed the home a few years before came back in to essentially broker the deal. And that was how we bought the home. We gave them a free vacation in our Cape Cod house as part of it. We're still really close. Like they're really, really sweet, nice people. And funny connection. I live in a town called Holliston, Massachusetts. The lady's husband, Glenn, he's like 80 something years old. He was a pastor at the church in my random tiny town back in the 70s. Really
Oh,
weird.
wow.
But that was that like sort of line of purchasing. And working through this a little bit now, I'll at least speed us up to when I joined the mastermind STR Secrets. I can kind of pause there, but so we bought that house in the spring of 2022 is when we closed on it, and we launched it in June of 2022. June of 2022 is also the first short-term rental wealth conference.
Mhm.
And I had left my W-2 in April, 2 weeks after buying this house, which we call now Logan's Lodge. And it was my realtor in Chattanooga, Adrian, her and her husband, Harley, who were going to this short term rental wealth conference. And they're like, Dave, you should come. You're no longer in a W 2. And I was like, why not? My 34th birthday was the final day of the conference. I was like, that'd be a fun present to myself. I was like, hey, Kim, can I go down? She's like, yeah, of course you can. Go for it. So, when I left my W-2 in April, I was kind of more of the opinion, I'll just not work for 4 to 6 months and then I'll just get a job working for someone who used to work for me or something like that. And we'll just see where this leads. And obviously, I've never gone back to having a W-2, but it was in that short term rental wealth conference that I met Julie George and I learned all about co hosting. And that really sort of set the stage. I feel like there's these two really distinct areas in my life. There was younger than 34, so pre June of 2022. And then since then, which has been even then different iterations, but that was like the stake in the ground. Life was going to be a lot different after that short-term rental wealth conference, and it totally has.
I love it. I love it. So I know from just our mastermind, you focus on getting luxury short-term rental. That's
Yeah,
been a focus for you. What are some ways you're finding people to host for? And then I think a better question would also be, how do you turn people down that are like quite not up to the standard?
totally. Well, I guess we'll continue on with this timeline because it'll lead us into that answer. So after um after that conference, I essentially made the decision I should start co-hosting. And I was selling houses on Cape Cod anyway, so it was an easy layup to say, "Hey, I'll manage it for you too." And there were people that were interested in that. Um Mike Sjogren and Bill Faith held a little retreat in Miami in September of 2022. And while sitting in the back of the conference in June in Nashville, I'm so proud of this. I made one of the best sales of my life. I sold Kim on the idea that we should spend like 7 grand between flights and tickets and everything and go hang out with 100 people in Miami and a lot of the presenters from that conference. And we should do this and we're only on one salary. We only make half the amount of money we made before. And she said yes. She was like almost instantly. We thought about it for a day and she said absolutely. And that was another like life-changing opportunity because we got down there, we spent a lot of time with Mike, we spent a lot of time with Bill, we spent a lot of time with a lot of other amazing operators. And it was there that Bill really leaned into Kim and I. He took us out to dinner and he really leaned into Kim and I about staying with nicer properties because in that 2 or 3 month period, I had taken on co-hosting clients. I had no idea what I was doing. I wasn't in the mastermind yet. And sometimes I would tap into some of the coaches of STR Secrets that I was friends with, but I really didn't know what I was doing. And it was pretty painful. It wasn't fun. It's not fun running a business. It's not fun running a business when you don't know what to do. That's funny.
That was
And
I don't know how those happen, but anyway.
yeah. And so we went to that little retreat. And that was when Kim and I got on the same page about what was the revenue that we wanted to make monthly and how were we gonna get there. And that's when we both looked at each other and we're like, let's really double down on co-hosting. And it was there that I got to spend some time with Mike and E and really got my paradigm roughed up a little bit about uh I learned how to just like chill out on all these different things I was trying to do to generate income. Being a realtor, this investing I'm doing in Tennessee, which I was still doing at that time, creating a co-hosting business, trying to find another short-term rental off market. I had a million side hustles and no real gig. And that's when E really laid into me and he's like, you're scared of not having money, so you're doing all these things. And the irony is you're not really making any money. You're just really busy. And he's like, are you having fun? It's like, nope, no, I'm not. And I pretty much put on blinders to everything after that and went all in on just co-hosting. Occasionally I'd help someone buy a house or sell a house, but I wouldn't let it take up too much time. That would be like the side hustle, the play money type of stuff. And we continued on until December of 2022.
Hey,
And
really quick, you mentioned the word paradigm. Do you want to explain to everyone what you mean by that?
yes, yes. And you know what's funny? I was watching a YouTube video today with Bob Proctor, and he said, you don't actually know the definition of something until you explain it, so the person you're explaining it to understands it. So I'm going to get tested here a little bit. We'll see how this goes. So paradigm, in my opinion, is a framework for, I'm making this up as I go, but to me, a paradigm is a mental framework. It's a box for what you yourself believe you're able to achieve. And I think that if people want to know where their paradigm's at, the way we've taught is take a look at your habits. What's your income habit? What's your savings habit? What's your attitude habit, your health habit? Your habits are like the reflection of your paradigm. And I think our income, our peace of mind, our satisfaction in life those are really just habits, because we have the ability to change them. None of them are fixed. So to me, paradigm is like the nice box that all of that fits in. And it's really just sort of the grade on how your life is going is how I like to, I think I'll stick with that as my description. So let me ask you, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes
Okay,
sense.
cool.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense for sure. And I'm not in the, you and Rashmi are in another kind of mindset program, which I'm not in, but I get bits and pieces of it from her and a lot of other people, and
Yeah.
it's amazing. So I'm curious, like, how could you explain to someone how to change their paradigm?
That's the $1 million question, girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, the way I've been able to do it is see what I write out my goals, which goals, in my opinion, should never be something that you know how to achieve. There's no real gain in that, right? That's just working harder, in my opinion. So to pull yourself out of your existing paradigm, create these really fantastic goals that get you excited, and then start changing your habits of actually being that person now that is capable of achieving those goals. Now, what's funny is everyone thinks like, oh, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm just gonna go. So like, there's this assumption that people that make a ton of money spend a ton of money, and it's so not true. It's so not true. It's the funniest thing. Everyone's just like, oh, well, that would be expensive to live that way. I'm like, no, no, most millionaires drive a Toyota. It's not. It's really not expensive. Um, it's more about your peace of mind, your donation, the percentage of your income that you save, um, giving a lot more. And it's not always money. It's a lot of times it's just knowledge and time.
Mhm.
So I lean into the Dave who's achieved these goals that have not yet been achieved, but I live my life as if they are. And that has slowly raised. The tide has gone up that holds the ships. And I think, whoever's in my circles has benefited from that, even the ones that have no financial gain by me making more money or helping more people.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love that. I think, well, I know for myself, I get caught up in okay, that's great. I have these goals, but yeah, how do I get to them? And getting, caught up in the weeds of, well, what's the plan? When it's like, just trust that the plan will follow after
Mm-hmm.
you've decided this is what you're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it's not about deciding what you're going to do, but deciding who you're going to be. And
Mm,
then, like, the what you're going to do will sort of figure itself out. You'll find yourself getting energy to do things that sometimes you didn't used to have energy to do, whether it's certain networking events or certain calls, or whatever it is, because you start to think, well, Jen, who makes $1 million a month, lives life this way. You know what I mean? And yeah, sometimes there is an increase in spending, but as long as it's for the right things, like game on. For us, that went from monthly housekeeping to weekly, just to open up more time and to get some laundry folded and to get some toys put away so we could have more quality time together as a family, So it's not always it's not always just buying really expensive stuff.
Right. Yeah. We
Although
could
that's
use laundry helper. We could
Yeah.
use laundry helpers, right, Rashmi?
Yeah. The other thing, and then I'll double back on the mastermind. The other thing, like a really great way that doesn't cost any money to raise your paradigm is to just start making decisions based on what you want, like only what you want. Now that can screw with people because I think a lot of people think they want something, but if they ask themselves deep enough, they just want it to fulfill something secondary to that. That might be like, oh, well, actually, I thought it was what you wanted me to think I wanted. That happens all the time. So I'm looking down right now. I've used this example a few times. This pen is like my favorite pen in the world. And it might be kind of funny that we're talking about it on this call right here. Um, this was a $450 pen. Why in the world did I buy a $450 pen? Well, first, I needed something really nice to write with that made me feel good when I wrote things like my affirmations and readings that I do. Yeah, you got a cool pen too.
yeah.
And what was funny was I'm not going to die $500 poorer, I promise. Like I know it's not going to happen, so I know I'm good there. But I thought about it at 9 a.m. I was like, that'd be a nice pen. I'm writing all this amazing stuff down, and I have a pen that's got the name of a hotel on it that costs like 50. Like I'm not respecting what I'm writing down. And I thought about it at 9 a.m. and I didn't buy it. And I thought about it at 3 p.m. and I'm like, oh my gosh, 7 hours. Like I'm now wasting time by not buying this thing.
Mhm.
Like I've probably wasted more of my own time than this would cost. Anyways, I bought it. Makes me super happy. And I feel like I've made that back in a day of working. So it's totally fine. But, raising your paradigm is about really just making decisions based on what you want, not on outside factors, whether that be money, time, energy, or what someone else thinks, or your own fears that might be bundled into that. So
And raising your standards, right, Dave? Like
totally,
brought on
totally.
luxury listings, and these are the only kind of listings you work with because this version of Dave is you hold yourself up to that quality. So if you're going to meet an owner that has a $2 to $4 million property, are you going to take a free pen from Marriott and take that?
Right.
"Oh, I'm gonna take a nice pen in your like it's about how you present yourself too, right? And not about the money factor, but like when I write with that nice pen, it's the only pen I use, or I use it to sign a lot of title documents. I feel powerful. And like I
Yeah.
make it a point personally, like if there's a really nice hotel in my area, and part of changing the paradigm is maybe I can't afford to stay in that hotel every night, right? Obviously. I go to the coffee shop there and I look at other people. I'm like, what do they wear? Like, what are they carrying? What kind of shoes do they have? And then I
Totally.
write my goals, and that gets you in the mindset of like, how do I kind of start thinking about getting there? And somehow you end
Yeah.
up there. Like, then I start booking these kinds of hotels.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. The income always catches up if your mindset's in the right place. But you said something so important, standards, right? It's great to have these goals, and it's great when our paradigm and our self-image aligns with those goals, but it's really easy for something to knock us off kilter if we don't have something holding us in place. And I find that our set of standards is what holds us in place. And that raises the floor, right? So for our business, for the houses we take on, and I think this is so important too, just like tying it into co-hosting, is that it's great when you can make more money and do less and put less stress on your team. One way you do that is you have homes that make more money. You need
Mm.
fewer of them to hit certain financial milestones. And in my opinion, as a co-host, you never want to be the Amazon of or Walmart of co-hosting. You know what I mean? Like there's just there slim margins aren't good for anyone in a business. You want good margins. So, and you do that by either having higher rates or just having better homes that make more money. Raising standards, not just for your business and what properties you'll take on or the standards you have for owners, but having standards for yourself too, for the activities you'll do, right? So I replaced TV completely with reading a lot of this mindset, the mindset material that we go over. Um, Literally didn't watch a single Patriots football game this year, and I would have killed to just make sure I didn't miss a minute of it just a couple years ago. Um, so with that, I had to quit fantasy football that I've done for like 15 years too, because there was just no point in that anymore. It's just a waste of my time. So sometimes you save money by living like $1 million a month, Dave. It's not about spending money. But when you set these standards, what ends up happening is the opportunities that get attracted into your life match those standards, right? They find you, and we can talk a little bit later about our consulting company and how we can offer support too to owners that might have a home that doesn't meet our standard, but we feel like the owner themselves meet our standard for doing business together. But that's just being creative and having fun with business, I would say. But um so anyway, so that's sort of been our journey. We joined STR Secrets right at like the end of 2022 into 2023. We ended up letting go of most of our co-hosting clients and starting over because none of them met that new standard. And for anyone that thinks this is a numbers game, I'm here to tell you, you can start back over from ground zero and be just fine, like totally fine. Um, so we started that over. We still obviously had our two properties that we owned. We had one that we still co-hosted, and I just kept going back on my game with prospecting and bringing in leads, building up that pipeline. By the late winter, early
What are
spring,
your
I think.
ways to prospect?
What's that?
What are your favorite ways to prospect? How do you bring it?
Networking and bringing value to other people, usually realtors, lenders. My biggest co-hosting property ever, which isn't live yet because it's full gut renovation, came from a hot tub salesman. So sending, I had this rule and still do in Maine that I won't co-host a property unless it has a hot tub. That means a lot of people got to start buying hot tubs. So I started feeding them to a hot tub salesperson that I enjoyed working with personally, and he delivered the favor, right? So bringing, usually the way I say the best way to bring someone value is to bring them business. It's not to pay them money. It's not to go do dirty jobs that they don't want to do or don't have someone to do. It's not by doing free labor. It's literally bringing somebody business is usually the best way that you can bring value to somebody. So I built my business at the same time as a realtor up in Maine started building his STR specific realtor service. And quite honestly, we grew together. Now we needed people to co-host. So I reached out to Kenny Bedwell at STR Secrets and started educating him on this secret market in Maine, which has then made him and other people a lot of money because he could send people there through his STR Finder service and different things like that. So it's just knowing who is in your network. And the way I've always brought people value is by bringing them business. And so I do that through networking and understanding what people need and want in their business.
I love that. I love that.
Um, and I always say, because like in the beginning, everybody wants to know what they can, like the worst question you can ask somebody is, how can I bring you value? Pro tip, just bring them business. Bring them clients. That is all you need to do. So from there, I'll kind of speed through the rest of this. We hired a few virtual assistants because I wanted to be able to go on vacation in the summer without being bothered too much. By the summer, we had 15 pretty high-end properties online. We joined the boardroom. around that time, it was around that time that I started coaching for STR Secrets. I was really enjoying co-hosting and really wanted to be able to give back to the community. And as that's grown, now we have 24 co-host properties, and then consulting, a really, really interesting field in short-term rental service offerings, I guess. I literally took everything that I learned in being a consultant for healthcare, realized if I could make a hospital not get shut down, I could probably make it work with a short-term rental as well. But if you're doing your job as a salesperson, you're always asking questions to learn about inherent perceived problems. And sometimes their problems can be solved with just a quick discussion. They don't need a property manager. And I realized that there's this whole cohort of people that were approaching me for property management or didn't want it and just want to learn. And I realized if I could build out all their tech stack and then support them for some given amount of time, but also introduce them to the vendors locally in that area, that I could bring them a ton of value.
Mhm.
And instead of them paying $15,000-$20,000 a year in co-hosting services, they could pay a fraction of that and continue to self-manage and also get the benefits from depreciation and like some of the tax loophole stuff with short-term rentals. And that was really how our consulting business completely took off. And I'll kind of pause there. That kind of like brings us to current there. And a lot of my mindset work, we'll go back to that. Like mindset was something I seem to always struggle with a bit over the years. I wasn't depressed, but I'd get frustrated easily, or I was always finding myself in conflict, like internal conflict or conflict with an owner or with a guest or with my dog or with my kids, like with everything. And I always really, really enjoyed a lot of the mindset work that Mike Shokran would do with us. It was in that very first short term rental wealth conference that he taught us about visualization. And that was when I wrote down my goal of $1 million a month net to Kim and I. And so I could always visualize what that looked like. I had it, on a goal card similar to this. And I never really made I never really made any material progress towards that goal though. Of course, my company grew and, we'd have months of 10K or 15K. Great. That was not the goal though. And when we were in boardroom last November and I met the gentleman, Dave Conway, I felt like we got really deep. And it was one of those experiences. Every time he was going to say something, I'd sort of finish his sentence in my mind and I would nail it. And I was like, holy moly, I have to work with this guy. This is the missing link to our real growth. And the reason it's so important to me, going from November to now, this month, in the 4 months I've worked with him, 3.5 months, we've tripled our income of our business. Last month we doubled, this month we tripled. So it works. And that's why I'm so big on it. And what I've learned was that the not the it w- the hardest hurdle for me to jump wasn't that like I had to work harder. It was that I had to study this material more and understand like what governs the world and how things actually work and how to relax into that idea of the person that I was becoming and then perch myself right on that same level as my financial goal of $1 million a month. And then let this world figure out how it'll actually come about. And it's not that I just sit there on my couch and hang out and just wait around all day, but subconsciously, the actions I take every day seem to be in service of me achieving my financial goal of $1 million a month. And then we have massive savings goals and massive charitable donation goals that we hit every month, which is fantastic. And they're all in alignment with that. So it's a really neat journey. And several people have reached out and they're like, dude, you are a totally different person. And all I did is I went from Dave who made 10K a month to Dave who this month it's looking like we'll hit 50 just within our co-hosting and consulting business.
Love
But
it.
I had to make that jump mentally first. And that's that where that separation finally started happening was in there.
I love it. I'm getting like goosebumps.
Yeah, awesome.
You have something you mentioned was you have all of these different ways you're making money. And you had that before you kind of joined, like you were doing Burr, you were short-term rentals, long-term rentals. Now it seems like you have the exact same thing, like you have multiple sources, but they all come from one industry. I think that's so powerful.
Yes,
I talk to so many investors and they're all like, I'm lending money, I'm doing this. I'm like, it's good to be diversified, but be an expert in one thing and be the very best at it.
totally. And to that end, now we have two going on three streams of income. The third is that we're going to be coaching and supporting property managers is going to be kind of the biggest avatar, people that want to learn how to consult, because that's a very foreign industry to a lot of people, but like how to be a consultant, how to sell that type of service and how to deliver that kind of service. But what's interesting is like I am still very focused. What's happened though is I built this team in co-hosting. That co-hosting team, which is very, very strong, a team I'm super, super, super proud of, was able to spread sort of their attention span into servicing both consulting and co-hosting. And through building good standard operating procedures, they were able to successfully bridge the gaps between the two businesses, right? My focus is still the same, running a business and bringing clients in. Bring clients in. I manage the top end of that business. My team is getting more and more experience so they can do more and more, right? And so, and then we've started to bring on more team members like social media and content and all this other stuff. So as we start to build this third branch now of teaching people how to become consultants and actually licensing the consulting model for people, once again, I have this sort of CEO person right now over co-hosting and consulting, and she'll help head that for us too, right? And then she'll have these different focuses, and then we'll continue to build under her and just like grow all of that. And so, but for me, my focus is still the same, right? It's bringing in business. Usually that entails me giving service and serving people and sharing content and educating, building the systems or the framework for the systems for the team to build, and then just making sure that all the KPIs are being hit. And I don't put my head in spreadsheets. For me, usually a KPI is more of a gut feeling. Like, how's this going? Is this good? Like, are we hitting these numbers? Great. You know, I do try and keep it simple. I don't try and over nerd it, but um,
I
yeah,
think one of the things, I don't know if you realize it, but you do what I do, which is I try to fire myself from as many positions as possible.
yeah, yeah,
Well, and I focus on one thing, which is how do we generate more revenue and how do we keep more
yeah,
in our pockets? Those are like my
yeah,
two
yeah,
things.
yeah.
Everything else somebody else can handle.
And a lot of things I think about too are just how do I make my clients more money? Also, whether they're a co-host business, whether a co-host client or they're a consulting client, do I need to give them some more education? Do I need to do a new video on a new topic? Like, how do I continue to bring them value? And I think about that a lot. And it's not always me delivering the value. It could be my team. It could be more of like a group call to people, but I think about that quite often because I truthfully feel the more money I can make for my clients and the more money I can actually make for the people that work for me, at the end of the day, this world will figure out how to make sure I'm financially whole. And it's worked like a charm. It works like a charm.
I love it. If people want to get in touch with you, what services do you offer? How can they find you? And do you want to talk a little bit
Yeah.
about your podcast as well?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. Let's see, how can folks get a hold of me? Instagram's a pretty easy way. Dave_Menepace. So pretty easy there. You can find me on Facebook as well, just Dave Menepace. And then our company website is uh, five, the number five, strcohost.com. Someone stole 5-star co-host. So I was like, well, STR, that's kind of cute.
You don't
That'll
actually
work.
know that I stole it.
You know the people that own it?
I'm pretty sure that I do. Yeah.
Do they want to sell it to me?
I also have a co-hosting company.
I know they do. They're in Florida,
Yep.
or there are a few areas.
Yeah. Small world.
Oh, maybe I'll buy them. Let me
Right?
know if they want to sell their co-hosting company, just so I can get the URL. It would be really fun to talk to them just for the heck of it. Twins will be twins. And the podcast, yeah. So the podcast really falls under sort of our content creation. So we've been really fortunate in that we're in Hospitable Host 2, one of the books in the Hospitable Host series. And what a fun like group of people to author a book with. It's just super neat, a lot of fun, really amazing experience. So we're in there, as well as another book called Creating a Life of Abundance. And that's about building a life of abundance with your spouse through the lens of real estate. And preceding all of that, a few years ago, we started a podcast called Hassle Free RE. And that sort of has two seasons in it. There's general sort of interviews with real estate investors. Rashmi, you are our latest guest on there. And then we also have another track on there called STR Success, which is a Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Facebook Live, usually about 15-20 minutes. And myself and short-term rental realtor Will Van Wickler get on there and just talk about topics related to STR and investing and just trying to bring value to people.
I love that. How do you manage it all? You have kids, you have wife, you have a house, you have real estate, you have consulting, you have podcasts. Like how do you
Nobody's asked me that in a while. People asked me that before I stopped everything and started it over again. The difference now is I just have a really fantastic team under me. We have systems for running our businesses. We have systems for running our lives. We do try and keep our lives pretty simple. We really do. I still have the houses in Tennessee, which that's its own bag of worms to unpack, but they don't lose money. They make pretty decent money, but um once you learn how to create a system for a business and start small with that, small, you can then start to build that out and apply that to every aspect of your life. And the more routines you can implement in your life, from your personal life to your business to your health, the easier everything becomes. That way you just don't have to think about it. And so, kind of to what you were saying, Rashmi, for us, the more businesses we start, as long as we can find somebody capable of running it, that's kind of the decision you make to switch it out of being a side hustle to being a business. And I'm not really down for doing, like, I don't need to do side hustles anymore. That's just a time not well spent. So when we do it, we go at it with a plan, and go at it with a plan for delegation pretty quickly after, so we can create, job opportunity for somebody.
it's all about how we serve people, right?
That's it. That's it. The better you serve, the more you'll make.
I love it. Any other questions, Jen?
I don't think so. I got my mindset information, so that's fun. I love the mindset nuggets. Those are always great.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me on, everyone.